Here we are today at Brentwood Urban Farms. We're going to take you from the beginning to the end of harvest of the onion. We've all seen that onion in our own kitchen where it's gone a little bit too far, we hadn't eaten it yet, and it starts getting these little rootings that come out of the end. The rest of the onion's still good, but you can chop off the bottom of that onion and just stick it back in the ground. You'll have one of your own growing soon. So you dig down in the soil, just a small amount, but you are going to completely cover this. Try and put in the root of it as gently as you can and then kind of build it around the bulb so that the roots are placed gently so they can grow down. The key to having a great onion harvest is soft soil. The way that the plant grows is the minute that root starts hitting anything solid, it will stop growing. So the softer your soil is, the bigger your onion's going to become. Make sure you give it adequate water. You're going to need to do that for at least the first couple of weeks. I would water it just a little bit each day. Once it starts to root, onions don't really need a lot of water after that. But in those first couple of weeks, the rooting process is very important. So I'd recommend giving them a little bit of moisture each day. After probably a few weeks, you're going to start seeing just a little bit of growth. This would be an onion that's been in the ground now for, I would say, probably about 4 weeks, and you're going to start seeing this amount of growth. The next stage, it's going to start looking a little bit more like this. You'll start getting a little bit more developed, and at this point, the onion doesn't need as much water as we had mentioned earlier. You're probably going to see this, get to maturity over 15 to 20 weeks. And then it's just a matter of how long you keep it in the soil. You will start seeing bulbing up above the soil is probably your first sign that it's getting close. That's not the time to pull it yet. There's a few things that you should look for before you actually pull the onion. The leaves will start getting a little brown. You don't want to let it start to flower. Once that starts, the onion can start getting a little more bitter. It's not the end of the world, but your best time is right about now, right before this is about ready to break. So let's pull this one out. Oh, that's beautiful. Let's let this one join the others. The key now for the next day or two is to let the bottom of the onion still touch some dry soil. When you place them back into the soil for the first couple of days of drying, the best thing to do is make sure this portion of the onion is touching dry soil. It simulates that the vegetable is still growing, and it allows it to dry just partially before you take it back to where you're going to do the next stage of it. So the next step is we will wait for this part of the onion now in a little bit different environments, in an area that has a little bit of a breeze, no direct sun, dry. As long as you can keep everything in kind of that condition, then you have the perfect setup for the beginning of your curing process of your onions and shallots and so on and so forth. What you're going to do is wait for these stalks now to basically entirely become like this. That's the most perfect place to get to. They will completely go brown and kind of dry out. And when that happens, there is still going to be a fair amount of curing that still needs to take place in the rest of the onion. But you want all that to be kind of moving into this and keeping as much moisture in there, but at the same time curing at the same time. So once this goes all brown, you'll then take your cutters and you will chop this portion of it off about right to here. So this will all be dry when it's time to do it. You can see it's starting to dry already. You'll clip that off. So after we had let these dry and we had cut this off, this is what it becomes. Now you have an onion that still has a little bit of a crown right here on all of these. And this will kind of ooze when you first cut it. You'll actually see moisture coming from the onion. There is still a lot of moisture inside the overall onion, and a lot of that has come from those stalks. This is going to take another 4 weeks. When the onion is completely ready to go into your root cellar, everything will be dry, including the top of this part of the onion. When that happens, you can take the last bit off if you desire, and just give it one more clip. This isn't really something worth probably taking. It's not that tall. This one probably would be. You'd just take a little bit more off and you'd be done. But you won't be seeing any more green here like you still are on this one. That still needs time, so it's still wet. And eventually, after about 4 more weeks after chopping the stalks off, you end up with an onion like this that is completely dry, completely cured, and ready to be placed into your root cellar. Root cellar is a valuable resource for anybody who is growing a large amount of produce. We'll head over to the root cellar and give you an idea of something you could put together as opposed to the normal root cellar that we all picture, which is in a deep, dark cave underneath the earth. Not everybody's going to have a root cellar, so an onion can actually be eaten right from pulling it out. The only reason that you cure an onion is because you're wanting to have time in the future where you could actually still find it edible. If you want to take a much more natural route, you could pull one onion from the ground, chop it, eat it that night. The onion's not going to just go bad, but if you want it to last for months, you're going to need a root cellar. We take the onions from the original curing area that we had, and we're going to bring them over, in this case, to a root cellar that we had built. What we did here is we just put cinder blocks up, filled them with mud, put a couple of doors on, and voila, you have a root cellar. Inside we have a humidifier and keeps it nice and cool in there. Here's our onions. We have shelves along this one side. The onions can stay in there. We have garlic that we have in here as well. The other great thing about a root cellar is you can also turn it into a wine cellar. Not so bad. Nothing better than putting some onions, your tomatoes, a little bit of cheese, and a nice glass of wine. There you go.